In my mind, I see three main types when it comes to gank fights that don't suck. Type 1. You have independently functioning AIs, but the fight works because their attack speed, range of attacks, or level of aggression makes it so they don't overwhelm you with simultaneous attacks that overlap in an unfair manner. Type 2. Independent AI that otherwise might not function fairly, but you either have environmental clutter to help split the enemies, or you have something like an ally provided for the fight. And Type 3. The AI does not work independent of one another and instead is synchronized. These are the types of fights that I, Magicat, the magical cat, will be talking about today. Keep these three types in mind, I'll be referencing them a lot throughout the video. Also, as this is a Souls channel and those are the types of games I usually seek out, expect many entries from Souls-likes. With that said, let's begin at number 15. Team Ninja's only good gank fight comes in the form of Chinese Ornstein Mo, Wen Chao and Yang Liang. By default you have an ally with you on this mission, Guan Yu, but I prefer fighting bosses solo as I find allies make them too easy in Wo Long, and to my initial surprise, that works perfectly fine here. The challenge for the devs is making a fast, deflection-based duo fight with lock-on work, and that's where even Sekiro failed. Obviously, if you don't dismiss Guan Yu, you could see this as a fine enough Type 2 gank fight, where an ally is provided to help split aggro. But should you fight them alone, it works as a Type 1 gank fight, where the fight is made fair due to the lack of aggression and speed of the bosses. But this boss takes that to an absolute extreme. If you take on Wen Chao, you'll very rarely end up being interrupted by Yang Liang. He just politely watches you two duke it out and barely ever has any input. So I'm not sure how much I should praise this as a good gank fight when it's not really about them working well together, but rather just being kind enough to let you fight each one-on-one. If you do try going after Yang Liang, Wen Chao won't be as passive, and that's when you can see it doesn't really work well with the two of them attacking at the same time. Yang Liang moves too much and it makes it hard to keep both on the screen at the same time. But I still appreciate them for a couple of things. One is how they have a synchronized attack, meaning both enemies stop what they're doing to do an attack together. I think that's cool, and not enough gank fights take advantage of that idea. The other thing is how the cutscene actually tells you how the fight is going to work ahead of time. Guan Yu immediately kills Yang Liang in the intro, who then gets resurrected by Wen Chao. It informs you that should you kill one before the other, they can resurrect their fallen companion, who then ends up coming back to life stronger than before. This doesn't mean you have to kill them at the same time, because they can resurrect only once. So while there isn't much of a juggling act going on here when you fight the two, you still have to make extra decisions because of there being two of them. For this, I think it's a pretty competent duo battle. In my opinion, Bell Gargoyles is FromSoft's first good gank fight. They had the right idea with Man-Eaters in Demon Souls, but unfortunately, the AI of that boss had different plans. Much like them, Bell Gargoyles are found in a high spot, but you rarely have to worry about falling down, or their AI pooping out. This fight falls into Type 1, one being ranged and the other melee, with one usually staying back and breathing fire. And even when the both of them go for melee, they're slow enough where it works. The fire breath covers a terrifyingly large amount of the area, but I think the long and clear telegraph makes it not bullshit. I think the one downside to the Gargoyles is that the second one shows up very late to the party. While it is a memorable oh shit moment in the game, it leaves the gank portion of the fight a small aspect of it, and one you can skip with enough damage. But I rarely do, because I much prefer taking on the two of them. When I do, I often switch targets and go for the freshly joined Gargoyle, since that fire breath leaves him stationary for a while with his back completely vulnerable. And I find the battle to be won easier if you do this, so I think it's well designed to reward the player for switching targets rather than commit to killing the first one. It's a great template that unfortunately led them to creating some of the series' worst fights. Belfry Gargoyles and Valiant Gargoyles. What the fuck happened? Abyss Watchers are a really interesting multi-target boss, despite them first appearing to be just Artorias wannabes. At the very beginning it's a one-on-one, and that initial Abyss Watcher is the one you need to hit in order to damage the boss health bar. Then another Watcher rises up and it becomes a 2 versus 1, which actually works quite well. Even though they're nimble, fast and have the same exact moveset, their quicker moves tend to have poor range, and their more precise distance closing attacks have long startups. So I think they're pretty well balanced as a pair, even if they could use a little bit more health. But then suddenly a third Watcher shows up with glowing eyes, and this one attacks anyone and anything, including his fellow Watchers. You can use this to your advantage to separate the two Watchers that were ganking you, and kill one on your own while the other is fighting glowy eyes. And if you manage to kill your opponent fast enough, you can double team the boss. The red-eyed Watcher isn't exactly your friend though, he'll still attack you if you're in his way. So this boss is somewhere in between Type 1 and Type 2 ganks. It works well as a 2 versus 1, but it also works well as a split aggro fight. It's not amazing or anything, but it's a fun twist on the usual Gank fights. Of course, it gets overshadowed by Phase 2, but that's no fault of its own. Most fights would get overshadowed by the fire-wielding Watcher. It's fucking sick. I guess this is a good point to mention that I'm only rating the Gank portions of each boss, so Abyss Watchers having an awesome Phase 2 doesn't elevate it any higher in this ranking. There's one single factor in Shadows of Yharnam that makes a fight that could be awful into a rather great one instead. That one big-ass gravestone. That alone saves the fight. And probably you. Otherwise, fighting two aggressive opponents with a spellcaster in the back firing constantly would be a complete massacre. That being said, the little gravestones do help a little bit too. But with the big one, you can easily separate the three and get out of line of sight from the spellcaster. So obviously, thanks to the arena, this is a golden example of a Type 2 gank. Typically, you're gonna want to focus on the most aggressive of the shadows, the katana wielder. Should you use parries, you'll find this a lot easier than if not. However, the shadows have another trick up their tattered sleeves. Snakes! Right around the time you're getting close to killing one of the shadows, the three suddenly have snakes burst out of their bodies, giving them new abilities like extendable arms. Thematically, I love it because it mirrors the snake twist of the preceding area, but it also ensures the difficulty of the battle doesn't drastically drop after one of the shadows is dead. Regardless, I do find myself enjoying the fight less once it's down to just two. Usually the two remaining are the spellcaster and the candle-wielding shadow. They feel very limited in their movesets and responses to being attacked. They need that third guy to fill in that gap. For that reason, I'm keeping the shadows relatively low in the top 15. You don't see many synchronized gank fights in video games, so in case you've never seen one before, this is how they work. They don't just freely roam the battlefield and do whatever they feel like, they're designed to work together. In Oro and Mato's case, they purposely take turns attacking while the other one stays back. And they can also do simultaneous attacks, such as this jump attack. I think the small arena benefits this fight as well. It ensures you don't just keep backing away from them, you'll constantly be fighting for what little free space there is in the room, and sometimes end up in between the two brothers and have to jump over them or dash through them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this fight. It's 100% fair, flawless, perfect, but I also always forget it exists. There's nothing here that's really memorable. I don't have any fond memories about it. When I was making this list, this boss was the last to come to mind. So, it's great, this is how you make a synced boss, but after posting this video, I'm sure he will be wiped out of my memory again. We have another Dark Souls 3 boss, this one being the middle chapter of the Sister Frieda trilogy. Like Abyss Watchers, this ends up being overshadowed big time by the final phase, and it's not entirely just because the final phase is awesome, even though it is. But I think it's also because to us Souls players, this was nothing all that new. Ariandel is big and slow, Frieda is nimble and evasive, and their mechanics are pretty standard. Big slams from the daddy, icicle eruptions from the sister, but as far as this concept goes, this is one of the cleanest iterations of it. The icicles are a great mix with everything else that's going on. They make sure you don't just hide behind Ariandel's fat ass and spank him to death. They can still reach you through him, but it's not cheap. And Ariandel is so slow, it's physically impossible to have RNG screw you over and have unavoidable damage when he and Frieda both attack you. Even Ornstein and Smo can have a small chance of bullshit like that happening, but not this fight. Also, a subtle but brilliant design choice was having the walls of the arena get destroyed after Phase 1 in the transition cutscene. It expands the arena that would have been far too claustrophobic for the pair, while the big room would have been too expansive for the understated duel in Phase 1. So, not being exceptional doesn't make this fight any less great on its own. Sons of Thor, Magni and Modi pick a fight they would never in a billion years win, but because the plot needs Kratos to struggle, they put up a good fight. This boss has all three good gank types in place. With the snowblind intermission phases and Magni throwing Modi like a bomb in the final phase, there's some neat synced attacks in place. As a duo, they complement one another nicely, Magni being more aggressive and Modi more defensive. And on top of that, the little boy Atreus can help split aggro and even free you from Magni's grabs. You'll also be constantly switching targets since each time you deplete a third of either of the brothers' HP bar, they'll get knocked down and recover that health if the other one isn't brought down to the same threshold quickly. So mostly I would say this is Type 1 and Type 2 ganks, half and half. That being said, I really wish you had better mobility in this game for dealing with shit like the Modi giant lightning bomb attack that covers half of the entire arena. The Last of Us camera and movement doesn't really work well for this. Oh well, it's still a cool fight and serves as a good blueprint for some of the fights to come in God of War Ragnarok. Well, one in specific. As much as I would have wanted to refresh myself on this boss before making this video, Lords of the Fallen just doesn't want me to. I tried replaying the game on New Game Plus, get this stupid Umbral ending that unlocks Elian, but this one door simply cannot be opened on New Game Plus. It's apparently a common bug and it's just never been fixed. It's been there for months. Then I played a fresh character, did all the steps for the Umbral ending, got to the fucking final boss. Then what do you know? Apparently earlier in the game I opened a random door that locks you out of being able to complete the quest. There is zero indication that that would happen. There was nothing I could have done, except look it up ahead of time and know that. I replayed this dogshit ass piece of shit game twice, just for this one boss, for this one video. And the game fucked me in the ass and didn't let me. I hate this game. I hate it with my entire being. It's the worst thing ever made. Oh yeah, the fight's pretty good. Whenever Elian summons her clone, you fight that instead, while the real one is summoning floating eyeballs that do wither damage. Wither damage is basically holding your health hostage until you manage to hit the boss back before being hit yourself. If you're hit by something other than wither damage, that confiscated health is taken away for real. So the eyes aren't that scary on their own, but combo well with the clone who can make that damage real. I also like whenever it and Elian fly through the arena together, or have one fly and the other shooting beams. It's a good synchronized battle. I wish I could recommend anyone to go through the trouble of unlocking it, but I really can't. For one last time, fuck this game, I'm never playing it again. When I talk about All Might being a great multi-target boss, I want to make it perfectly clear. I am not talking about Phase 1. That part sucks. Unlike Phase 2, which is absolutely goated. Your main target is All Might's AC, shooting blue lasers from afar and striking you with a laser sword up close. Along with them, he, or she, they have a couple of sea spiders that are linked with the AI of All Might. Not just in story, but gameplay as well. They do synced attacks with All Might, such as double lasers, turning into spinning tops, and periodically firing homing plasma bolts at you. All of these are fair thanks to the red arrows indicating where off-screen attacks are coming from. Plus you don't feel so outnumbered thanks to Air being at your side. She's tremendously helpful with her coral shields, being able to take aggro, and doing respectable damage. So it's both Type 2 and Type 3 gank fight, and it's awesome. But the reason I don't think I should rank it at the top is that the Sea Spiders almost feel like an extension of All Might's moveset. It's like they're just additional attacks, it feels less like a multi-target boss than the others here. It's not a criticism, just that the gankiness part is kind of a small element of the fight, so I don't think it makes sense to put it at the very top of this list, even if All Might is easily my favorite of all these bosses. There already is a video dedicated entirely to that. Dark Souls 3 really likes making top tier gank fights and then have them be overshadowed by an even better single target boss. That's the case here again with Demon Prince, or Demon in Pain and Seaman from Behind. Dark Souls 3 also likes doing really unique ganks. In this case you have the two demons on Enrage and cooldown modes. Demon from Below starts out being enraged immediately, which makes it more aggressive, while Demon in Pain is more passive and spews poison from afar. Both are on a timer until their roles change. Soon enough both will be enraged for a brief time, then Demon from Below, who was the first to be enraged, enters the cooldown mode. After a while, both will be on cooldown for a little bit, and then the cycle repeats. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. It might seem like they're scripted to keep switching roles, but really their AI is independent. Their patterns are just on a timer and they start at different points, so by design they match each other well. They're fair, offer you lots of options for how to engage it, whether you want to keep fighting the enraged one or target the more passive demon, and which you want to kill first is up to you. And whichever you killed last will be the one you fight in Phase 2. The differences aren't super major, but still nice to have that choice. It might not be the most exhilarating fight ever made, but everything design-wise here is fantastic. This is fan service in its truest form. I remember back before they added this boss in a DLC, people kept begging Team Cherry to make Mantis Lords but with all three targets at once. This wish was granted, and it was even better than any beggar could possibly have hoped. It's as fast as this game and an arena this small could ever allow for. The sisters only have 3 abilities each, yet the way they can non-stop mix them up makes it so damn exhilarating. And of course, this, like the original Mantis Lords, is a Type 3 gank. Probably the most obvious example of it. Synced attacks is quite literally the only thing they do. There are 2 little downsides for me though that keep it from being at the very top. One is that there isn't that much to it once you've done it a handful of times. There are only so many different combinations of those 3 attacks that you can get. Other fights on this list tend to have better replay value because they rarely feel the same. And the other thing is that once one of the sisters is defeated, the whole thing slows down a lot. It's quite jarring. I don't get why they didn't have them just share the health bar. I'm sorry to be ultra nitpicky, but I have to be so that I can separate the top picks from one another. They're all really damn good. And I don't really know what else to say about the sisters other than that, yeah, it's fucking fun as fuck. As an adrenaline junkie, I approve. Ornstein and Schmo is not only the most revered multi-target boss of all time, but also one of the most celebrated boss fights, period. So it being only number 4 might come as a surprise to some, and to others it might be ranked too high considering how much competition it has received since it was made. While I do agree there are a handful of fights made since that have surpassed it, I don't think this has aged poorly at all, with the exception of Ornstein's charge attack. This boss started the trend of one is fat and slow and the other small and agile that's seen throughout this old series. But one thing many fights that copied it have lacked is the brilliant arena design. With a lighter build you can take on the 2 of them without the need of the pillars, but regardless of your setup you'll probably need them whenever you want to heal. And with less agile builds they really are a lifesaver. And it's just cool to have them break the pillars. Makes you shit your pants when you think they've just destroyed the only cover you had, but the stumps of the pillars do still help. So it's the perfect blend of Gank types 1 and 2. But what I love the most is just how well it works when Ornstein and Smo are attacking you at the same time. You have to make so many quick decisions on the fly, like using Smo to body block Ornstein from being able to reach you, utilizing the pillars to stop Smo's charge, and figuring out in which direction you should roll, because your position in this fight is so fucking important. Not to mention the big decision, which of the 2 will you kill? The one you didn't will be buffed in the second phase. Obviously Super Ornstein is much cooler and more unique, but then again Super Smo cutscene is way better. Either way I find phase 2 quite bland in comparison, but it doesn't matter for this ranking. I'm only ranking the Gank, and in Ornstein and Smo's case it remains excellent. If there's anything I've learned from doing this video, it's that Dark Souls 3 really nailed multi-bosses. Before anyone asks, I'm not counting Twin Princes as a gank. It's really a single boss, with Lothric being sort of a weak spot and only adding 2 attacks. It's awesome, but I wouldn't call it a gank. Pontiff, on the other hand, most certainly is. He makes a copy of himself and then mimics every attack that his copy does with a brief delay. It's so simple, yet so effective. After dodging the clone, you can prepare to position yourself in a way that lets you punish the real Pontiff after you've dodged his attack. Or you could take out the clone, it doesn't have much health. Should you do so, you get to fight Pontiff one-on-one again, with his patterns being slightly more demanding than before. And when he tries to resummon the clone, you get ample opportunity to damage him. I used to have a big issue with this fight, and that's whenever the clone and Pontiff begin spamming quick melee combos together. It's really awful if you try dodging away from it, or just iframing each strike. The first strike and its copy come too closely for you to be able to iframe both. But I've noticed that if you just dodge through the attacks at the right angle, usually the copied attack will miss you, and the 2 stop their combo early. So you should treat these combos more like the flame after effect of Lady Maria or the Abyss Watcher. And I think that's so cool. There is still the small issue of desyncing that can happen from time to time. Sometimes Pontiff just ignores the clone and does his own thing, but 9 times out of 10 it works, and when it does, it's majestic. I'm glad I made this video just because this boss and this phase finally 100% clicked for me. Dark Souls 2 made so many failed attempts at gank fights, littering the entire game with them. And yet the one really good one they made, they hid behind an obscure questline and this awful cave spelunking. It's a shame it's so annoying to reach, because I genuinely think Dark Lurker is the best gank fight FromSoft has made to date. And it's one of the more simple ones design-wise here. It's a pure Type 1 gank. The arena offers no reprieve, they aren't scripted to hold hands while attacking together, it's just a perfect combination of 2 movesets that are identical. While phase 1 isn't very noteworthy, it is nice that it shows you all the moves before doubling them. I find Dark Lurker to be really challenging, but never bullshit. There has never been a single time when I get hit that I don't recognize that it was my own mistake. They often teleport around the room, so you always have to look around and make sure you know what both of the lurkers are doing. And each of their spells have a really distinct purpose. Fireballs make sure you're on the move. Teleporting bombs are an observation check. Magic missiles challenge your reaction timing. Laser beams test your positioning, and the melee attacks ensure your strafing and dodge timings are well tuned. I don't know if this was a happy accident, a lightning in a bottle or what, but Dark Souls 2 struck gold here. Wrist and Mist, the duo Valkyries of God of War Ragnarok, is the best gank fight of all time. Why? Because it's a full 3-course meal of synchronized gank goodness with a little helper to split aggro and all the right lessons learned from Magni and Modi. Instead of being just the first phase, the middle phase, or the last phase, this is 3 full phases. Nothing but this one long battle against Valkyrie sisters in one of the most visually pleasing arenas I've seen. It is a pure pleasure of a fight. I've said it before and will say it again, as much of a hot take as it is. I don't even really like God of War Ragnarok, but it was just immediately obvious to me that, yeah, this is the best duo. Duh. Also, yeah, I'm playing terribly. I haven't touched this game in a long ass time and I'm rusty as fuck. But I think my favorite aspect of this boss is how the Valkyries switch turns and how Atreus fits in. With Magni and Modi, their aggro felt a little more random. Sometimes both would target you, sometimes neither. Here you're most of the time fighting one Valkyrie, but they can tag out with no warning, and if you fail to save Atreus from being grabbed, he'll be stunned and you'll be left to fight the 2 of them alone for a bit. But if you do have Atreus, he'll always aggro one of the Valkyries, and you can use his arrows to cancel enemy attacks. Now, this is a multi-target boss ranking, and sure, you're mostly just going one-on-one with a single Valkyrie at a time, but the fact that both of them have fun movesets on their own, are constantly swapping, have many cool as hell attacks they do together, as well as force you to switch targets yourself whenever Atreus is in peril, solidifies that this fight is excellent because of the multi-target aspect. And so, it is number 1. But that's just my opinion. As closing thoughts, I wanna say, I'm really disappointed I didn't manage to get Manscaped sponsorship for this video. I could have made such a smooth transition into talking about a different kind of pair, and it would have been so good. Oh well, what can you do? I hope even without that you enjoyed the video and have your own thoughts to share.